Welcome back for another Friday Night In with 10 Minute Horror. Tonight's story, we're going back to the exciting days of childhood during the Halloween season. Break out some candy for this one. This is the Witchwood Estate. When I was a teenager, I opened a Halloween haunt in an actual haunted house. I didn't know it was haunted at the time. There were only myths about the place, legends. I heard one story about a teen couple going there to make out, but having their faces melted together and needing an ambulance and hospitals and surgeries to separate them. Of course, the truth of that one ended up being that both teens had braces, which became stuck together as they were kissing, and there were no ambulances, hospitals, or plastic surgery, just a dentist. But there were other examples, some that were less easy to disregard and didn't have the truth shining through in the end. There were stories of people going missing on the property, sounds and strange lights coming from inside, a crow that was always hanging around on a tree near the property entrance, waiting to snap down at nosy kids. The thing is, there weren't any specific or consistent entities. There wasn't some tall creature roaming the woods, or a skinny trio of sister witches floating above the chimneys. Every sighting was unique and individual. Some might say it was unique to the individual even. Some people like Wally McDonald, the town drunk. Wally was the former town sheriff, but was let go shortly after his alcoholism was revealed during a bad accident he caused. Sadly, it was only a few years before his retirement. Sometimes at night, you could see him walking around town, a cigar in one hand and a bottle of loudmouth soup in the other. Wally still had that drive, deep inside of him, to protect and serve in some way. When we were asking around town about the estate, Wally came to tell us about his experience. In one of his long twilight walks down Main Street, he found himself on a different road and ended up outside the Wychwood property. As he finished the last of his booze, he saw a new bottle on the ground in front of him. It had a few ounces left in it. He picked it up, gave it the smell test, and swigged. When he finished, he saw another bottle in front of him. He picked it up and drank it as well. Then there was another bottle, further ahead. Wally went to it, finished it, and saw another. It was at that point he realized he was on the Witchwood property, and just as he passed the next bottle, he came to a hole dug in the ground. It was rectangular, about 3.5 feet wide, 8 feet long, and 6 feet deep. At the bottom of the hole were dozens of bottles of booze. Wally stumbled back, afraid of the grave waiting for him, and ran back to town. Wally told me he hasn't gone back, and warned us kids to pick a different house for Halloween. But that was Wally, and who knew what the hell he saw in an alcohol-induced fever dream. I never really knew what to believe about Witchwood. I'd been around the property a few times, but never inside. I'd never seen anything strange, but the air did feel thicker, like it was closing in around you. It was my friend Alex that came up with the idea to use the Witchwood Estate. Alex and I were horror heads and always talked about having our own haunted hotel, one that people would check into and we could scare them all night in different ways. All parlor tricks, of course. It was a pie-in-the-sky idea, and we knew that, which is why we dialed it back and came up with the idea to turn the estate into a Halloween haunt. Alex and I had a group of friends, only one of which had been inside the house, who all wanted to join in and help. All our parents were nervous at first, but then saw how hard we were working on the designs for the old mansion. One of the parents was a real estate agent, and we managed to convince her to talk to City Hall. The property was owned by the city, but they could never find anyone to buy it. So after a few back and forths, the city agreed to let us use the property for the week leading up to Halloween night, and 2 days for takedown and cleanup. That gave us more than enough time to prep the place with our expanse of ideas. All our parents chipped in too, helping out wherever they could. One of my parents' friends owned a consignment shop downtown. We managed to get all kinds of costumes and wigs and props, but the big prize there was they lent us over 24 mannequins. I had an idea to use them in the basement. Another friend's parent was the vice principal of our school. He helped us get access to all the lights and speakers that were used in the auditorium for assemblies and plays. We sprinkled them throughout the mansion, keying on specific, darkly lit locations like the library, the kitchen, the upstairs hallway, and the basement. We created a playlist of scary ambience, with jump scares sprinkled through every few minutes. There were screams and cries and moans and angry shouts concealed behind walls and furniture. The lights we used sparingly to highlight paths to take and doorways to enter. We used mostly reds and yellows. We also had a car mechanic, a firefighter, and the owner of the hardware store helping out with the mansion. Everyone turned the place into something horrifying, with a scare around every corner. Upon arrival on the property, you were led up the steps to the front door, which opened to a boot room. From there, you were led to a large open foyer and split staircases, matching one another in semi-helical arcs leading to the second floor. From the vestibule, there were 3 routes through the ground floor that led to a conservatory, a living room with fireplace, a sunroom, bathrooms, an office, a library empty of books, and a games room empty of games, a large dining room with a grand fireplace, and a heavily fire-damaged kitchen. The back door and wall had been burned out, boarded up, and nailed down with scrap wood. So there was no back door. But there was a second way out, and it involved the staircase going down. We decided to fill the first 2 floors with scares and allow people to wander the mansion and find them organically. But if they wanted to get out of the mansion in the end, the only way was the staircase down and through the basement. The basement was the perfect final act. It was a massive, open space populated by load-bearing pillars, while a furnace and several large machines, for which I'm told were used for making bootleg liquor during Prohibition, sat in the back corner. There were no windows and only one door, and that door was hidden. It opened to a long walking tunnel that led 300 feet away from the house and came up to a set of storm doors camouflaged in the cornfield. From there, you were directed back across the property, where we had a concession stand and lounge set up in the barn. And that was it. We planned out the scares based on the blueprint of the mansion we had, so when the front doors were unlocked for us, we spread like a horror-themed plague through the mansion, infecting every hall, room, nook, and cranny with props or masked figures, or lights, or speakers, or all of them. But over the course of the week, strange things happened. Aside from a general feeling of unease while in the mansion, everyone involved agreed they felt a paranoia and agitation carry on with them even after they left and went home. My friend Alex told me on the second night of setup, someone else was with him in the mansion. He'd stayed late with his dad and was bringing down some cans of paint when he heard footsteps in the room next to him. Alex called out to his dad, but there was no response. Then came heavy wheezing, shuffling of feet, movement against the walls. The wheezing turned to a croaking laughter belonging to an old man. It caused Alex to run out of the room and downstairs. He found his dad outside, waiting for him. Alex's dad claimed he heard Alex calling to him from outside, calling him away from the mansion. The two left, but Alex said it didn't stop there. When they got home, Alex continued to hear the wheezing. He didn't sleep at all and kept the lights on all night. Then there was Julian. He'd been helping set up speakers in the tunnel under the property by himself. When he was done, he tried to leave, but the path back to the basement came to a fork where it split into 2. One of the paths curved, so he chose the one that went straight ahead, but it kept going, and it eventually led Julian to a disturbing room filled with chains mounted to walls and strange carvings on the ground. He swore he heard the chains rustling, which caused him to turn and run back down the path. Julian claimed he was lost for over an hour, walking up and down the same underground footpath that led nowhere in both directions. When Julian finally made it out, he was angry at us, claiming we were playing tricks on him. He was so upset, he never came back. Then there was Kathy, one of the moms helping with prep. She'd been downstairs, helping set up the mannequins in the basement. This was easily the scariest part of the house, as it was the most difficult to keep lit. Light just didn't carry down there. The large, low-ceiling basement was filled with the mannequins and had speakers and lights set up strategically to highlight certain scares. On the mannequins, we removed some of the limbs and heads. We gave some of them wigs and masks and fastened some of their arms up in the air. In the middle of the mannequins, there was a speaker hidden to the left. It pumped out horrifying screams just as customers would pass by. The plan for Halloween night was to plant some of our own people amongst the mannequins. Our people would shift around as customers walked through, giving the impression of movement amongst the figures. Since the main light source was a spotlight at the back of the room near the tunnel, all you could see were the silhouettes of the mannequins. Kathy was by herself working amongst them, applying wigs and masks to select figures. A scream shrieked out behind her and startled Kathy. She thought it was someone messing around with the speakers, but they hadn't been turned on yet, or tested, and the sound it made wasn't one of ours. Then Kathy saw movement amongst the still figures, only they weren't still anymore. They were shifting and turning and twitching. The ones with arms raised them and pointed at Kathy. A horrible laughter emitted from them all. Then they began to fall into each other and forward, toppling one another like dominoes towards Kathy. The power went out and the basement was thrown into full darkness. Kathy was found trembling underneath a pile of mannequins. Her arms and face were bloody and filled with plastic splinters from the large dolls. And more frighteningly, some of the hair from the wigs had gotten into her throat and nearly choked her. She never came back either. More and more people dropped out throughout the week, their reasonings being that either the estate really was haunted, or someone amongst us was playing mean-spirited pranks on the rest. Either way, 9 out of the 17 people who were on board at the beginning had now pulled the chute and wanted nothing to do with it. It was all the more strange for the rest of us because the estate didn't seem that bad. Sure, it was a large mansion with lots of shadows, but the rest of us hadn't seen anything remotely supernatural. The remaining group discussed the situation and questioned whether someone really was trying to prank us all, either inside the group or outside of it. Nothing really came of the discussion, and with all the people dropping out, we weren't sure we could even pull it off, but we'd done so much work. It felt wrong to walk away and abandon it. We figured since we put the time and effort in already, we might as well see it through. Halloween night came and our crew did a walkthrough. Everything was great. The sounds, lights, and scares worked and timed out perfectly, and with us sprinkled throughout the house offering jump scares in our costumes, we felt proud of what we'd accomplished. We were nervous people wouldn't show up. Between the estate's history and the rumors that were going around town from Kathy, Julian, and the rest, I felt almost nauseous on the lead up. But then we saw headlights coming down the long driveway, and more headlights behind them. Kids and parents in costumes started to arrive and explore the exterior of the property. Our first group, a family of 4, went into the mansion. All the workers were in their places and ready for their signals. It went perfectly. The family was afraid at all the right times. The sound and lights were on cue. The mannequin gags scared them all. Only one of us, a girl named Michelle, was dressed up with the mannequins, but she did a great job moving through the figures stealthily. She was a drama student, so she went a little extra with snarls and hisses. The family made it through the tunnel and out of the storm doors into the cornfield. They talked about how fun and scary it was. Everything was going great. 3 more groups of people went through, back to back. The first 2 came out scared. The last group, a trio of teen girls, came out terrified. One of them had a large cut on her knee from falling in the tunnel. The girls claimed several of the mannequins had chased after them. We apologized, telling them that one of us was hiding amongst the figures, and she might have gotten a little carried away. The girls shook their heads no. It wasn't just one. There were 5 or 6 mannequins climbing over each other, pulling and clawing their way into the tunnel behind the girls. I didn't know what to say. We offered the girls their money back, but they refused it and left. A new group came out of the storm doors. They were laughing and having fun until they realized they were missing one of their friends. They claimed their friend had been right behind them in the tunnel, but must have dropped her purse or something in the basement and gone back to find it amongst the mannequins. We waited 5 minutes, but there was no sign of her. I let the group go back in through the storm doors and tunnel to look for their friend. Several minutes passed. A new group exited. They had questions about the mirror room. The mirror room was on the second floor and was located in the largest bedroom with high arched ceilings. From the consignment shop, we'd also gotten access to dozens of change room mirrors to fill the chamber with. When you entered, you were surrounded by your own reflection and reflections of your reflection. There was a path through the mirrors that led to one larger mirror in an old Baroque frame at the far end of the room. The larger mirror was tilted slightly upwards. This was done so when you approached it, the back corner of the ceiling was revealed behind you. We positioned what we called the Scarecrow Witch in the top corner, which had long arms and fingers reaching out above the room. The group claimed the Scarecrow Witch, which we'd made out of a CPR doll, layers of old fabric and hay, a dark wig, a mask, and papier-mâché claws, had jumped down from the wall and attacked them. One of the group had 4 slice marks down the back of their shirt, resembling a claw swipe. They claimed the Scarecrow Witch chased them downstairs before disappearing into a wall. They wanted to know how we did that and their money back to replace the one girl's shirt. I got them their money back, but played dumb about the figure. Another minute passed, and a new group had gone into the house. That meant there were 3 groups, plus the one that had gone back into the basement to look for their friend. From where I was in the cornfield, I could see several windows into the house, but I wasn't picking up any movement. I watched Alex bring another group up to the front doors. My stomach tightened. I wish I waved over to him to wait up, but I didn't. I hoped everything was okay. I tried to explain away the past group's story about the attack. Maybe the anchors on the wall loosened and our homemade Scarecrow Witch detached from the cables keeping it stationary, causing it to fall down and swing into the group. The mansion was so dark and filled with even darker shadows after all, and there were sounds and lights constantly assaulting the senses. I kept hoping they were all just accidents and coincidences. Through the windows, I watched the newest group making their way up to the second floor. I checked the storm doors and looked into the tunnel but didn't see anyone in it. Though it was dark, there were 4 groups that should be coming to the exit now. The group inside was going back downstairs. I watched them follow the directions to the basement. I checked the tunnel again, but it was too long and shadowed to see anything. I got out and saw Alex leading the next group in. I yelled his name and waved to hold the group back. Another minute passed. The last group should be through the basement now. I should see them and the other 4 groups. Then I heard a rumble. The storm doors shook. Dust, dirt, and rocks exploded outwards as the tunnel caved in. Everyone heard it and came running to the cornfield. The dust settled, and we saw the entire tunnel had collapsed. You could even see the grass of the backyard dip down as it led from the cornfield to the mansion. The basement entrance was filled in too. The full 300-foot length of the tunnel was now just fallen dirt and rock, with 20 feet of more dirt and rock above it, pressing down. We scoured the house, but all 5 groups were missing. The fire department, ambulances, and police arrived shortly after. An emergency rescue team was brought in to hopefully find survivors, but instead, they found the bodies of the 5 groups. It appeared that right in the middle of the collapsed tunnel, the groups had stopped, as if blocked by something. Then the tunnel caved in and either crushed them or suffocated them all. In the end, all 18 people from the 5 groups died in the tunnel from the cave-in. No one, including the investigation team, knows what caused the collapse, and we'll never know why that first person stopped. All of us who put not just time, but so many resources into that night, left and never returned. No one wanted anything back. All the mirrors, mannequins, sound equipment, lights, costumes, decorations, it's all still up there in the Witchwood mansion, waiting for the next generation of ragtag horror freaks, just like mine, to pick the wrong place for their passion project. And that concludes tonight's episode. We hope you enjoyed the Witchwood Estate, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. We'll see you right back here next Friday night.